A 5-year-old girl, her skin marked by recent burns, trembled with pain and fear on the sidewalk of an affluent neighborhood. Her tear-filled eyes begged for compassion as she murmured words that cut like blades. "She threw hot water on me when I asked for help." Most people looked away, pretending not to see, but a man stopped. He got out of a luxury car, heard those words, and something inside him awakened a fury that had been dormant for years. What happened next would forever change the destinies of the two. Subscribe to the channel to receive heartwarming stories every day. The city lights spread like fallen stars through the windows of the top-floor office. Silence weighed in the air conditioning, broken only by the rhythmic sound of fingers tapping against the mahogany desk. He watched the movement of the streets below, where tiny people rushed about their ordinary lives, completely oblivious to the empire he had built brick by brick. At 42, the millionaire had conquered everything a man could desire. His company dominated the city's real estate market, his investments yielded millions monthly, and his name was whispered with reverence in the most exclusive circles. However, when the lights went out and the employees left, he remained alone in his tower of glass and steel. He had no family, he had no true friends. He only had business, growing numbers in bank accounts, and a loneliness that spread through the empty corridors of his mansion every night. He had chosen this path long ago, when he learned that trusting people meant opening himself up to pain. He preferred the predictability of contracts to the unpredictability of human relationships. "Sir, the driver is waiting," his secretary announced over the intercom, interrupting his thoughts. He adjusted the knot of his Italian tie and put on his tailored suit jacket. Another meeting, another deal, another lonely night in his impeccably empty routine. The private elevator took him to the underground garage, where his driver awaited beside the gleaming black sedan. "Where to today, sir?" asked the uniformed man, opening the back door. "The usual." "Then drop me off at home." Her arms ached with pain, her skin still red and sensitive where the boiling water had touched. She had learned not to cry too loudly at night, as that attracted unwanted attention. At 5 years old, she already knew hunger as a constant companion, fear as an instinct for survival, and loneliness as her only certainty. She didn't remember having a home, a warm bed, or someone who called her by name with affection. She existed only in the immediate present, surviving one day at a time. When the sun rose, she gathered the courage to get up. Her bare little feet touched the cold concrete, and she began another day of searching for food and shelter. She didn't know that a few streets away, a powerful man was about to have his life turned upside down because of her. The morning was running as usual in the office. Meetings, phone calls, decisions that moved millions. He signed contracts without hesitation, fired employees as easily as he discarded useless papers. His reputation as an implacable man had been carefully built over the years. "Sir, I need to cancel lunch today. Your presence is required for an urgent inspection at the new development," his secretary informed him. He sighed, put the documents in his leather briefcase, and went down to the parking lot again. The new project was in an upscale neighborhood where he planned to build a luxury residential complex. It was another of the many gears in his money-making machine. Meanwhile, the girl had walked for miles to get to that same neighborhood. Her little legs were trembling with exhaustion, but she knew that people there had more money, perhaps more compassion. With the innocence of a child, she believed that someone could look at her and see beyond the dirt and injuries. That's how destiny began to weave the threads that would unite them. He driving towards the future development, she dragging her feet in the same direction, both unaware that their lives were about to collide in a way that neither of them could imagine. The midday sun beat relentlessly on the asphalt when she finally stopped to rest. Her strength had been exhausted after hours of aimless walking, and her empty stomach hurt as much as the injuries on her arms. She sat on the sidewalk in front of a luxury goods store where elegant women were coming and going, carrying expensive bags. The girl watched everything with childlike curiosity. The beautiful clothes, the shiny shoes, the smiles that seemed so different from the tired faces she was used to seeing on the streets where she lived. Maybe, she thought, if she asked politely, someone could help her. Gathering all the courage her age allowed, she approached the entrance of the store. A middle-aged woman, dressed in expensive clothes and with perfectly styled hair, was arranging products in the window. The girl lightly touched the glass door. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said in a weak but polite voice. "Could you give me a little water? I'm very thirsty." "You're scaring my customers," she yelled, gesturing aggressively. "Please, just a little water," the girl insisted, not understanding the hostility. It was then that the woman completely lost control. She disappeared for a few moments and returned with a kettle of boiling water that she used to prepare tea for special customers. Without hesitation, she poured the scalding liquid over the child's arms. The scream that followed echoed through the entire street. The girl fell to the ground, writhing in pain, as the skin on her arms was covered in red, swollen blisters. Pedestrians stopped to watch, but no one approached to help. It was easier to pretend that nothing had happened. "Never come back here again, you disgusting beggar!" the woman bellowed before slamming the store door. The girl remained there, trembling with pain and shock. Tears streamed down her dirty face as she tried to understand why she had been treated with such cruelty. Her burns throbbed intensely, but the emotional pain was even worse. It was at that moment that the black sedan rounded the corner. The millionaire was focused on a phone call, discussing technical details of the real estate project, when his driver braked sharply. "What happened?" he asked, interrupting the conversation. "There's an injured child on the sidewalk, sir. Looks serious." A small girl, visibly hurt, was sitting on the curb, murmuring words that the wind carried to him. "She threw hot water on me when I asked for help." He knelt beside the girl, and for the first time in decades, he felt his heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with business or money. It was pure indignation, mixed with a compassion he thought he had lost forever. "What happened to you?" he asked, in a soft voice, completely different from the authoritative tone he used in the offices. The girl looked up and met his gaze. For an instant that seemed eternal. He felt something impossible to explain. It was as if he were looking in a mirror of the past, an echo of something lost long ago. "The lady from the store hurt me," she whispered. "I just wanted a little water." She just nodded, unable to speak due to the pain. Without hesitation, he picked her up in his arms with extreme care, feeling how light she was for a child her age. Her injuries were serious and needed immediate medical attention. "We're going to take care of you," he said, carrying her towards the car. For the first time in years, he didn't think about consequences, about his public image, or about the costs involved. He thought only of a child who needed help and a growing fury against whoever had done that to her. The most prestigious private hospital in the city had never received such an unusual visit. Employees moved nervously through the corridors when they saw the most feared millionaire in the region carrying a street girl in his arms. His presence there caused amazement, but no one dared to question his decisions. "I want the best doctors available." "Now," he ordered the medical director, who appeared in a matter of minutes. "Sir, of course we will take care of her, but I must warn you that cases like this are usually referred to the public hospital." I asked for the best doctors. For the first time in his career, he ignored everything completely. His secretary called 3 times before he finally answered. "Sir, where are you? We have the meeting with the Japanese investors in an hour." When the doctors finished the dressings, she looked like a fragile doll wrapped in white bandages. The pediatrician approached him with a worried expression. "The burns are second degree, but with proper treatment, she will recover completely. However, I need to inform you that there is a protocol to follow. She is clearly an unaccompanied minor, so we must notify social services." "I can't just..." He watched her irregular breathing, the way she writhed even in her sleep, probably reliving the trauma in her dreams. Something inside him revolted against the injustice of what he had witnessed. But as the hours passed, an internal war began to unfold in his mind. What exactly was he doing there? He had built his entire life around logic, rationality, absolute control over his emotions. He had never been involved with charity, never shown interest in social causes, never wasted time on issues that did not bring financial returns. Why was that child different? He tried to rationalize. Maybe it was just a momentary impulse, a reaction to the brutality he had witnessed. Maybe he should simply pay for the medical treatment, ensure that she was referred to an appropriate institution, and go back to his normal life. That's what any sensible person would do. But when she stirred slightly and murmured something unintelligible in her sleep, he felt that strange connection again. It was as if she represented something he had lost long ago, something he didn't even know he missed until that moment. His driver appeared at the door of the room, discreet and concerned. "Sir, I brought some clothes and important documents. Your secretary is receiving dozens of calls." The driver, who had worked for him for over 10 years, was shocked by the raw honesty of that confession. The girl stirred again, and her eyes slowly opened. When she saw him sitting there, a weak smile appeared on her face, as if his presence was the most natural thing in the world. "You stayed," she said in a raspy voice, and in that moment he knew that no matter how difficult it would be to explain, he wouldn't be able to simply leave. The morning brought with it a haze of uncertainty. The girl had woken up with less pain, but she still trembled when anyone got too close too quickly. The doctors explained that it would be normal. Traumas like that left deep marks, especially on children so young. He stayed by the bed, watching her every move. There was something mesmerizing about the way she watched him back, without fear, only with a childlike curiosity that contrasted brutally with everything she had suffered. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She stared at him for a long moment before answering. "I don't know. People just call me girl or other mean things. I don't remember having a home. People always leave. She's just taking care of you." Her eyes lit up for the first time since he had met her. "Can I choose?" She rejected several, saying they didn't feel right, until he mentioned a name that made her stop completely. "That one," she said decisively. "That's my name." For the first time in his career, he delegated important decisions to his subordinates without supervising every detail. His company could function for a few days without him, but she couldn't be alone. Over the following days, they developed a strange routine. He arrived early at the hospital, brought storybooks that she listened to with fascination, and stayed there until she fell asleep. He discovered that she was incredibly intelligent. Despite never having attended school, she understood complex concepts and asked surprisingly deep questions. "Why are people mean to those who are different?" she asked one afternoon. It was a question he had been asking himself for years, especially when he thought about how he had built his own life isolated from the world. "Sometimes," he said carefully, "people are afraid of what they don't understand. And when they feel afraid, they can act cruelly." Employees speculated about his unusual behavior, and in the luxury goods store, a nervous woman was beginning to realize that her actions could have consequences far greater than she had imagined. A week had passed, and the transformation was visible in both of them. The girl had gained weight, her wounds were healing well, and most importantly, she had started to smile. Not just polite smiles, but genuine laughter that echoed through the hospital corridor and made the staff stop to watch. He, in turn, was experiencing something completely new. For the first time in decades, he woke up thinking of someone else besides himself. He planned the day around her medication times, her meals, her moments of recreation. It was as if a part of him that had been dormant for years had finally awakened. "Can I tell you a secret?" she asked one morning as they were drawing together at an improvised table in the room. "Sure." And he had sad eyes too, just like you. That afternoon, he made a decision that he knew would change everything. He called his personal lawyer. I need you to research the legal procedures for adoption. I want the best specialists working on it. He watched her peaceful face. Her small hands relaxed on the blanket and felt an absolute certainty that he was doing the right thing. But not everything would be simple. The next day, a social worker appeared at the hospital. She was a middle-aged woman with a skeptical expression and a clipboard full of forms. Sir, I am from the Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about the minor who is in your care. The situation is irregular, she continued. This child should have been referred to our services from day one. Now we have discovered that you are paying for private treatment and staying with her without legal authorization. We have registered families appropriate temporary homes. May I ask why a single man with no experience with children suddenly wants to adopt a street girl? The process is rigorous. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen. The girl had already been discharged from the hospital and was temporarily staying in a guest room in his mansion while the legal adoption procedures followed their course. She was exploring the huge house with the fascination of someone discovering a completely new world. He had hired a private nurse, a tutor, and even a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma. He wanted to make sure she received all the necessary care, not just physical, but emotional as well. It was a Saturday morning when everything changed. He was in his home office, reviewing adoption-related documents, when his private investigator called. He was a discreet man whom he occasionally used for background checks in important business matters. Sir, I finished the research you asked me about the shop owner and, well, I need to speak with you personally. It's too delicate to discuss over the phone. She facilitated the sale of babies to wealthy families who didn't want to wait for the traditional legal processes. She operated through a network of contacts in hospitals and orphanages. A newborn girl who was illegally removed from a family after a manipulated custody dispute. The case was never officially solved. The child who disappeared 7 years ago had a distinctive birthmark on her left eyebrow. The unexpected pregnancy that had temporarily united them, the premature birth, the fragile baby he held only once before everything fell apart. I had, he said with a choked voice, 7 years ago. My ex-wife disappeared with her after a custody battle. I never saw them again. Sofia Isabella Ferreira. With your authorization, I can collect the samples today. Everything began to make sense in a terrible and perfect way. The revenge, the disappearance, the years of suffering. It had all been orchestrated by the family itself. Where is Laura now? His daughter, his own daughter, had spent the last 2 years living as a beggar, suffering all kinds of deprivation, while he built empires and accumulated wealth. And Helena knew who she was when he left the office with determined steps and went to the garden. Sophia was sitting under a tree, drawing in a notebook that he had bought for her. When she saw him approaching, she smiled with that smile that he now recognized as exactly the same as his own. Look what I drew, she said, showing a drawing of 2 figures holding hands. It's us. Sophia, he said softly, using her real name for the first time. She looked at him surprised. How do you know my real name? I never told anyone. My heart knew. The medical document that should have brought relief also brought a renewed fury against those who had stolen 7 precious years of their lives. He spent the whole night awake, planning every move. Helena Vasconcelos had not only assaulted an innocent child, she had tortured her own niece, knowing exactly who she was and what she represented. It was a level of cruelty that demanded justice. The next morning, he called his lawyer. I want you to sue Helena Vasconcelos for assault, child abuse, and involvement in illegal adoption. I want her to pay for every second of suffering that my daughter went through. That same afternoon, she appeared at his mansion, accompanied by her own lawyer. She was a different woman than the one he had seen throwing boiling water at Sophia. Now she looked desperate, aged by fear. "We need to talk," she said when he opened the door. "We have nothing to talk about." As much as he hated her, he needed to fully understand what Sophia had gone through. 5 minutes. "I offered money, a place to stay, but Laura was too proud, too hurt. She was dirty, destroyed. I just reacted." He would prosecute anyway, but he wanted her confession first. Helena agreed, knowing that she had no choice. The press conference was scheduled for the next day. But that night, something unexpected happened. Sophia had a terrible nightmare and woke up screaming. When he ran to her room, he found her trembling, sweating cold. "I dreamed about the bad woman again," she sobbed. "She was hurting me again." "Daddy," she said softly, the first time she used that word. "Yes, my love." Instead, he made a different offer to Helena, a substantial sum of money in exchange for her permanent move to another country, far away from Sophia, forever. "You're buying my silence?" she asked. "I'm buying my daughter's peace. There's a difference." Sophia began to ask questions about her mother, about the lost years, about why it had taken so long to find her. These were questions that had no easy answers, and that would reveal how much there was still to heal between father and daughter. The weeks that followed were the most challenging and, paradoxically, the most rewarding of the millionaire's life. Sophia was adapting to the new reality, but the traumas of the past emerged in unexpected ways. Sometimes she woke up in the middle of the night looking for cardboard to sleep on. Other times, she would hide under the table during mealtimes, as if expecting someone to take her food away. He learned patience the hard way. All of his business instincts, solving problems quickly, making immediate decisions, controlling results, were useless when it came to healing the soul of a traumatized child. "She needs time," the child psychologist explained during one of the weekly sessions. 7 years of abandonment and neglect aren't healed in a few weeks of affection. Sophia was, unconsciously, mirroring his own fears of rejection. He decided to change his strategy. Instead of trying to speed up the healing process, he began to focus on consistency. He created predictable routines, breakfast together every day, reading before bed, trips to the park on Saturdays. Small rituals that built trust brick by brick. "Why didn't you come and find me?" Sophia asked one night during reading time. It was the question he feared most. How to explain to a 5-year-old the legal complexities, the manipulation, the years of fruitless searching. "I looked," he said honestly. "I looked for a long time. But the people who took you away knew how to hide very well. And that's the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life." But not everything was tender moments. Sophia also tested limits in ways that left him completely lost. One morning, he found her trying to save food under the mattress. "Why are you doing that?" "Never." His years of cynicism, of distrust in human relationships, of emotional isolation, everything was being melted by the unconditional love he felt for her. He began to make radical changes in his life. He drastically reduced his working hours, delegated more responsibilities, and for the first time in his career, he put something above profits: his family. "The shareholders are concerned about your absences," his secretary warned. "Then maybe it's time for them to learn that there are things more important than quarterly dividends." "Not with my head, but with my heart." He had found his purpose, his reason for existing, but he knew that the biggest challenge was still to come: to transform his personal experience into something that could help other children like Sophia. 6 months had passed since Sophia officially became his adopted daughter. The transformation in both of them was remarkable. She had become a vibrant, curious, and loving child, while he discovered facets of himself that he didn't know existed. But it was during a routine visit to the pediatrician that a casual conversation would again change the course of their lives. "Doctor," "Can I ask a personal question?" Sophia said as they waited for her follow-up exam results. "Of course, dear. Who sleep on the streets and go hungry?" That night, after Sophia had gone to sleep, he stayed in his office, researching statistics on homeless children, family abandonment, and neglect. The numbers were shocking. Thousands of children living in the same conditions that Sophia had lived in, with no prospect of change. "What if we did something about it?" he murmured to himself. The next morning, he convened an extraordinary meeting with his executive team. "I want to create a foundation," he announced without preamble. "An organization dedicated exclusively to rescuing and reintegrating vulnerable children. I asked about operational feasibility. I don't want a symbolic foundation that donates money to other organizations. I want a complete operation. Shelters, educational programs, psychological support, family reintegration when possible, and responsible adoption when necessary." "Did something happen?" "How so?" Sophia accompanied some of these visits, and her presence had a magical effect on the other children. They identified with her immediately, creating a connection that no adult could establish. "They trust me because they know I understand," Sophia explained one day, after spending an afternoon playing with children at a municipal shelter. "And what do they need most?" he asked. "It's not food or clothes, Daddy. It's someone who believes they're important." Sophia had identified the most fundamental need: human dignity. The Sophia Foundation, a name suggested by the honored herself, was officially launched 3 months later. The opening event was discreet but significant. Instead of a glamorous event for high society, he organized a simple party at the Foundation's first shelter, with the children themselves as guests of honor. "Today is not about me," he said in his opening speech. "It's about giving every child here the same opportunity that my daughter had, the chance to be loved, cared for, and to dream of a better future. And while that person doesn't arrive, we're going to take care of you here. Now that I have you, I dream of giving a family to other children too." What had begun as a project driven by emotion had become one of the most respected child assistance organizations in the country. With 15 shelters in operation, innovative educational programs, and a family reintegration rate of over 60%, the foundation was changing lives on a scale he had never imagined possible. Sophia, now 8 years old, had become much more than the inspiration for the foundation. She was an active participant. Twice a week after school, she visited different shelters, played with the children, and shared her story of hope. Her impact was measurable. Children who had arrived traumatized and distrustful began to open up after talking to her. "She has a special gift," commented the Foundation's chief psychologist during a meeting. "The children see in her living proof the transformation is possible." "How was your afternoon?" "Sometimes it's easier when there's someone the same age nearby." He had said that many times, especially when she asked why he worked so hard with the foundation when they already had everything they needed. "All right, but only today, and only if the team thinks it's appropriate." When he arrived at the shelter, he found Sophia sitting on the floor next to a bed, talking softly to a girl of approximately 6 years old who was huddled under the covers. "I was very scared too," he heard Sophia say. "But you know what I found out? The adults here are different. They're not going to leave. They're not going to hurt you. They just want us to be okay." "How do you know?" "That's why he made these places, to take care of the children until they find their families." Months later, during the Foundation's annual event, he was invited to give the keynote speech. Before an audience of donors, volunteers, and families who had been impacted by the organization's work, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had led them there. "3 years ago," he began, "I was a man who measured success only by his bank account. I had built an empire, but I lived in an ivory tower, completely disconnected from the reality of thousands of children who were suffering just a few miles away. It took finding my own daughter in the most desperate situation imaginable for me to understand something fundamental. True success is not measured by what we accumulate, but by what we build for others. But the most important lesson I learned didn't come from the impressive numbers that our foundation has achieved. It came from my daughter, who taught me that healing others is the best way to heal ourselves. But the truth is that we saved each other. He gave me a family and I gave him a purpose. The melancholy that had accompanied him for years had been replaced by something much more powerful: purpose. No, my love, I'm not sad anymore. I'm too busy being grateful. Grateful because you found me even when I was lost. Are you planning to expand your real estate business or focus entirely on the foundation? Are you planning to expand your family? That night during dinner at home, Sophia made an announcement that completely took him by surprise. "Daddy, I've decided what I want to be when I grow up." Why a psychologist specifically? Sophia had not only been saved, was preparing to become a savior. Years later, when the Sophia Foundation was operating in 12 states and had served over 10,000 children, he would reflect on that fateful day on the sidewalk. The encounter that had changed their lives was not an accident, but the fulfillment of a destiny that had been written in the stars long before either of them was born. Sophia was now in college, studying child psychology, and was already working as a volunteer at the foundation on weekends. Her personal story, combined with her academic knowledge, made her exceptionally effective in helping traumatized children. "You know what's most incredible about all of this?" she said during one of her weekend visits. "What?" "And now that love is spreading to thousands of other families. Now I know that success is about leaving the world a little better than we found it. Then let's keep walking together." Destiny had conspired to unite them, and they had conspired to change the destiny of thousands of other children. In the end, they discovered that the greatest wealth was not in the vaults of a bank, but in the hearts they had touched and in the lives they had transformed, and that the true reunion had not only been between father and daughter, but between the lost humanity of a man and the unwavering hope of a child who never stopped believing in love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive new stories every day. Share this narrative with someone special and leave a comment. What would you do in the millionaire's place? How can we, each in our own way, make a difference in the life of a child who needs love and care?